Energy is inherently a part of everything we do in our lives, but one of the least understood things.
I can see a future where there is limitless and free energy. And that's a pretty beautiful world to live in.
All right. Welcome back to another episode of Power to the People. Derek, it's you and I today. How are you doing?
Fun.
Just in general. How are you doing?
You know, I have to. It's a bigger question than it sounds. I'm doing really well. However, you know, I think if I look back, the last handful of years, this time of year tends to get really, really busy for us. And so I'll get caught up in the challenges, the day to day, there's a lot going on, and we're obviously in a very steep growth curve here at Mint. And so there's just a ton of I feel like I'm running between really big picture, long view, vision, strategy for, mapping forward for where the company will be in the next, 3 to 5 years. And then running back to immediate day to day, things that come up and it's just the nature of not only where the company's at, but where my role's at. And then there's on top of that, there's just that would be manageable. But then I've got, 2 teenage boys that are just, there's always something going on with them. And sometimes it's great, sometimes it's not, and it's teenagers, So in general, I remind myself, this morning, I was reminding myself I was feeling a little stressed, and I kind of just took a deep breath and went, wait, you get to go solve these problems today. You get to go drive your kid here and pick him up there and then rush to go to dinner with your wife. You get to do that stuff, not you have to do that stuff. And it's just a little bit of a reframe that I remind myself how blessed I am to even have these kind of, challenges to figure out around schedule and feeling spread thin. So I think that every once in a while taking that deep breath and going, wait, these are all challenges and problems that are a result of me living the life that I always hoped and wished that I could, and just it's a better place to start the day from, at least. So that's where I'm at.
Yeah, that's a good place to be. I'm kind of with you on that. With when so many stressors and so many things are on the plate, you're kind of like, oh, how do I juggle all this? How do I take care of it? And then it's funny, I do a lot of a morning routine as well, where it's kind of like, hey, reflect on what you got to do today. Where are you sitting in your life? What you want to accomplish? Where are you at in the world? And even this morning, it was writing sometimes the pressure cooker doesn't feel good. It's like, oof, there's a lot going on. But at the same time, it's right where I actually start to thrive a bit more.
Mm-hmm.
Can't do it for too long, but it's where I start to really find that rhythm and I start to improve a lot more. It's where I experience a lot of growth. And so rather than being like, oh, why is this happening to me? It's like, cool, how can I grow in this little stint of hard effort?
I mean, I think I mentioned it before, but I read I think it was in some book I read. I can't possibly remember which one, but the theory that was being posited was that humans, up until very recently in the long arc of what we know of human history, had a tremendous amount of environmental pressure, right? The where you could take it at the top level of the environmental pressure of survival, just straight up, how do I feed my family? Yeah, shelter. not get eaten by a saber-toothed lion, whatever.
Yeah.
And then you break that down to the daily challenges that those folks would have, right? That, okay, well, how are we going to find the food? Where is it going to be today? What have we been tracking on the herd or whatever, all these that are very similar to our kind of day-to-day problems. However, we don't necessarily have this real overarching, how are we going to survive? That pressure has been removed, and it's pretty hard to not survive in today's society, right? You've got to do some really crazy stuff to literally not die on your own will, right? I mean, outside of being really old, right? And so I think that we do things that are increasing that feeling, like going to the gym or martial arts or sports or whatever, racing car, whatever the thing is, like you're adding that like a little bit of that, like kind of what feels a little bit more like survival type of an activity.
Mhm.
And so I think that what you're talking about, to kind of bring it back around, what you're talking about, and I'm the same way, dude. When stuff gets crazy and really hard, I click into a whole nother gear without even having to think about it. And I get far more effective. My decision making gets really clean. If I can stay out of that fight or flight, you know, uh, sympathetic nervous system kind of situation, right? If I can stay present, I actually do better. And so I kind of like a certain amount of chaos. But to your point,
Mhm.
after a period of time, you need to find a way to turn that dial down a little bit. And I think that some of us are sprinters, and where that sprint, you're jogging along, and then it's time to sprint, and we show up for it. And some aren't. Some are like that freaks them out, and it's really
Mhm.
hard on them. And I've noticed that different personalities around the company, where like when stuff gets ultra intense and like has to be laser focused, they it's tough on them. So
Mhm.
it's harder for me, conversely, when things are just kind of cruising along smooth and predictable. I'm like, okay, what I get a little bit like, what's there to chase, and so then that's where I have to add in, okay, better start reverse engineering, how you get to the X EBITDA, that you want as a company or whatever, how do we increase profit and grow top line, to this point, and what do those goals look like, and start writing plans for that. I'll have to like go back into a really kind of heavy project just to keep that fire going, because I'm not great at just like the long distance trot.
How do you vacation? I'm curious on this. Like, do
Hmm.
you unplug when you just take a little bit of time off,
Yeah, I
or
tend
is
to
that
go.
where all those thoughts marinate?
That's interesting. It's funny, like what my brain says versus what's reality.
Mm-hmm.
So I think vacation for me is as much just doing nothing as possible, and just literally like enjoying being with, like, for me, there's a like my best relaxing thing is if there's nowhere that I have to be or nothing that I have to do. And that ends up being that I really don't do much. It's like reading a book in a chaise lounge, out, and somewhere nice. Or, even if it's like going somewhere that's not warm and tropical, it's, I try to, I try to limit the amount of schedule, I guess is what it is, things that need to be
Mm-hmm.
done. So some people like to take vacation. They've got that whole thing planned out. They're, what we're going to do at 10, 11, 12. And that's not vacation to me.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not somebody that likes to go adventure, go hike, go whatever. Like I feel like I've like lived my life in like kind of an adventure, and so when it's time to, like, if I get some time away, I like to just shut it down and just be like, I'm not doing anything. Like walk to the market, get a cup
Mm-hmm.
of coffee, go walk and sit at the beach and just relax, read a book, whatever, like that kind of thing. So that's how I do it. However, one of my favorite vacations is when I take the family up to the river, and we boat. We go water ski and boat and stuff. But even that is a very much not. You're not. There's no agenda. It's like you're just going to go get on the boat, get out of the water, and you might,
Mm-hmm.
you know, pull up on a beach and swim and hang out for a while. You might just go cruise around. You might take it and go, park and go walk to lunch. But it's not. It's not an intense thing. There's no like, here's all the stuff we got to do. So for me, that's it. Like I need like that total like shut it down kind of vibe.
Mm-hmm.
How about you?
Do you ever
What?
find yourself? Wow, I
Oh,
mean, yeah, I mean, my side, I find it hard for vacation. That was actually the question I was going to ask. Was like, usually, if I take time off, which is pretty rare, um, it takes a little bit of time for me to n- like. I always feel like I'm losing whatever that edge is, right? That the sharp end to be like, okay, I operate at a really high level. To me, like stepping back from the high level is almost terrifying because it's like, oh, well, everyone else is pushing,
yep.
to a higher level.
FOMO,
I'm
yeah,
taking it
for
easy.
sure,
Yeah.
dude. Yeah, yeah. I lived that for a long time. I think I'm getting old now, is all it is. But I know what you mean. Like I honestly, Karina will tell you that like I've like backed out of vacations like a week before we were supposed to leave, like many, many times, because I just looked
Mm,
at the company and where it was at, and I'm like, I can't not be there. Like I gotta keep pushing. I gotta keep driving. And yeah, it's hard for me to be sitting on a beach reading a book knowing that there's all this stuff happening that other people are doing. I just feel responsible. I feel like I need to be a part of it.
Mhm.
But it took a decade really for Karina to get me to a point where she's like, you don't do your best work if you don't take a break. Like, and to your point, and your original question was like, that is where a lot of big ideas come from, is when you just let everything sit, you stop all your day-to-day minutia, and you're just sitting there relaxing somewhere or doing whatever you like to do. You might be snowboarding down the mountain or whatever, but all of a sudden you start seeing things from a different perspective. And I think you can re-engage some creativity that maybe was not being accessed as well by taking that break. And so historically speaking, like if you look at the company, I've taken like the least amount of vacation of anybody per, tenure, but that's not that's not me boasting, or it's not me saying like, oh, look at me grind, or it's not me saying like, oh, I've had to do this and I couldn't vacation. I just didn't want to. I actually felt more excited by the moment of what was going on in business or my life, that I didn't want to go just sit somewhere. Like I'm like in the hunt, but she has been able to remind me that like, dude, you get burnout. And I had that happen. I mean, in the during the the pandemic, I ended up having a full blown like, mental breakdown. And I look back, and it was a result of just never giving myself enough time to like reflect and take a deep breath and let drop some of that stress. And so it's more like, I think every quarter I need to take a little break, right? Just to get kind of reoriented and get reframe that we started the conversation with, of just being able to get some gratitude, get back in that abundance mindset. It is a little bit operating from lack. If you think that you can't take some time away, that you're going to lose the edge, or something's going to happen, or what would happen without me in that conversation? No, that's real. That's all. It's all a story in your head, and or at least, I mean, certainly if you're operating a 3-person company, yeah, dude, like it's different, right? Were you at your previous venture? Yeah, it was probably different. But at a point like where we're at here with, close to 50 employees, man, if you can't take some time to reflect and reorient, it's not healthy. So we're as a company now pushing people. You have to take time off. Like this, moving into a phase of unlimited PTO here coming this next year, being able to tell people like, no, I want you to go take some time off. Like, go take a break, and almost forcing people. Some people are good at it and some people not so much. There's a few of us that are just like not into it, and we got to be forced into it. So I think it's important to remember that like that there's a rhythm to things. And, it's just like anything. You go to the gym, you don't have rest days. You're not going to get stronger. You're not going to recover or get stronger. And then over time, you'll have physical breakdown. Your health will suffer. It's probably that way with pacing yourself with your long distance running, swimming, whatever. Like you probably have to have phases where you know how to cruise. And I think that's an art too, is there's an art to getting into cruise as opposed to completely shutting it down. I have found that I've gotten better. It's almost easier for me to completely shut it down. But there are times where I like just being on a vacation. I get up early no matter what, right? And so let my family sleep in. I go grab a cup of coffee down at the little cafe, crack open my laptop, and just go through and look for the important things where I can add a little bit of value in whatever I'm doing, or respond to a client or whatever. And then spend that hour or two and then just shut it down, be done. And then just don't look at it for 24 hours. And then that gives me a little bit of that, like I'm still, not completely unplugged, but it's not stressing me out. However, that doesn't always work, because sometimes you crack that computer open first thing in the morning and something does stress you out. Now you effed up your whole vacation day.
The whole day.
Yeah. So you got to be careful.
I think one of the biggest challenges I just always found was actually learning that process of being able to either cruise a little bit easier for a set period of time or completely unplug. There is, I mean, huge value to it. Some of the best ideas I've ever had have come when I was doing nothing, quote unquote, because it was kind of that you allow your brain to process everything you've experienced. I think about it almost like dreams. Like dreams are something that I find incredibly fascinating, like how we come up with our dreams, what they mean, how you can actually, cultivate that. And still haven't gotten to the point to like learn to lucid dream. That's something I think that would be super interesting and fun. But it's kind of your brain doing that in the more tangible side of life. And I find the more that you're able to kind of unplug and let your brain process, that's when you have those breakthroughs. And I had this theory of like a 3-day work pattern almost, where like you spend a day preparing for execution, you execute really hard, and then you evaluate and you do it again, and you just keep doing that. And it allows the brain to kind of find more creativity in whatever that is. Like I think a lot of people put creativity in like this. It's got to be photography or art or film or whatever, but it could be accounting, it could be business, it could be strategy, it could be anything. It's just how do you increase that creativity, and that's always what I've been searching for. And I realized there was like this line where you can't push through it. You have to let that kind of progression happen rather than trying to be like, I'm going to overpower this. And I think that kind of grind culture is about pushing, 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 which is always good to do at certain times, but knowing when to push is more important than just pushing all the time.
Yeah. I think everything that we hear that almost becomes a meme, needs to be put into context, right? Like
Mhm.
it used, for a long time there was this like badge of honor from young people's like perspective of like grind. You got to grind. Well, that's kind of a reaction or a swing back from maybe a mindset that was like easy come, like it just show, you get to just go, like everything's just kind of like just show up and get your paycheck. And like, the grind thing was like, how do guys or gals that have started really meaningful companies, like how do they show up? Yeah, hell yeah, you got to throw everything you've got at it. Like there's no question. You're in the fight of your life,
Yep.
and anybody that's not prepared for that won't be successful. And so there is something to it. However, grind culture as a culture within an organization is shitty. It's stupid. It's inefficient. Yeah. It's not thoughtful. It's just and by the way, I've made that mistake. I was inadvertently early days in this company pushing people to a kind of a grind mindset that was reflective of where I was at. They didn't bear that responsibility. I did. And I was putting it on them. And I had to learn that they were like, we see that you're working on vacation, and it's setting an example that that's what the expectation is for us. And I'm like, no, that's not what, my expectation is that you give this thing more than you would your, job that you hate, and you just show up and just kind of clock through the motions and, collect your paycheck. Yeah, I want more than that, but I don't want you to have to live this like I am. Right. And so I think that again, everything is perception and context. And so I think we would have a far more effective business environment here in America if people knew that like if it was taught, maybe it is in business schools nowadays, I don't know, but if it was taught that like everything happens in cycles, and so if you can put yourself into the sprint cycle when necessary, so that intentionally you have a cruise cycle, right? Like where you can kind of be a little bit more. I mean, at the end of the day, it's really simple, right? So it's tactical tends to be operating reactively, which tends to be somewhere in like a scarcity mindset, like this has to be done right. And then strategic thinking or activity tends to be proactive and therefore more creative and more from an abundant mindset, right? So just being able to pay attention to where you're at. Sometimes neither one's wrong or right. It's just win. And if you're always tactical, always sprinting, you lose the big picture. And you can't see the forest for the trees, right? And so you have to intentionally sprint to get to a finish line. Imagine being in a sprint where you didn't know where the end line was. That's definition of hell, right? Like, you don't know what winning looks like, but you're in an all-out sprint. Like that's grind culture as it's being presented in social media right now. Is this is never-ending, 20-hour days, just bleeding out of your ears.
You familiar with the 995? So it's going kind of popular right now. Is it went from 995, which is 9 to 9, 5 days a week, to 996, 6 days a week. The company Ramp noticed there was an influx of usage of people from 9 to 9 on weekends, specifically more in the technology sector, of course. And it's like kind of that badge of honor right now of like 996. And it's like,
look, I love it because I lived it. I know, you know what I mean? Like there was times where it was like, you're putting in 70-hour weeks. Like it just, but
easy,
but it can't be. I think that you have to remember that if you're doing that, there's two things that I think are occurring. One is maybe three. One is you're like, I got to be working when other people aren't because I got to get ahead. You're already in a competitive mindset if you're doing that. You're already in a zero sum game. You know what I mean? Like if I've got to beat somebody in order to win, that's not real. Like that's just not good business. That's not the highest level of business in my opinion. Right. So there's that. Then the second thing is I think that you're operating with a lack of efficiency or strategic thinking, because I have noticed that when I'm really, really dialed, I can do the same amount in 3 hours, 4 hours that I can in 8 hours if I'm just smarter about it, or if I'm just building a hierarchy of priority around, what's important versus urgent, and understanding that distinction. And so I think that you're kind of building a shittier mousetrap when you go 9 to 9, 6, whatever freaking thing. I mean, do that if you want. And if that's like your passion, and if you're building something that you can't stop, like if you're truly engaged in something and you don't want to put it down, fucking do it. Yeah. But like that shouldn't be a mantra, because it just speaks to lack of strategy, in my opinion. And it can lead you to being in that zero sum competitive mindset versus the creative mindset, which is more strategic and abundance based. So I think that it's also not okay to be like, I think a big chunk of our society is like expects that they're going to be able to have their iPhone 17, buy a house, drive a new car, and not put in any grind. Like, what do you mean? I went and got my college degree. Where's my big fat paycheck? Because these things are a necessity for me. I need those things. I want those things. And you're like, what are you willing to give for them? Like, go back and read some of the turn of the century New Thought, books that we're talking about. What are you willing to give for the things you want? Because it's a trade. That's how the universe works, right? Like it is not just put your hand out and like, well, I got my degree and I'm going to go show up to my 9 to 5 and I should have all this stuff. And so I think that there's this like balance, right? Understand both sides of it. Like the grind culture thing exists for a reason. And it's because I think there's a lot of entitlement thinking in the world today, a lot. And I think that goes way back to what we started the conversation in, which was we don't have as an up close and personal association with, if I don't go hunt for that frickin' food, my family don't eat today. I grew up around a family business where that was kind of it. Like I've made the reference where it wasn't my family didn't live paycheck to paycheck. They lived sale to sale. Like if my dad didn't go close another deal, we didn't have income, And so it was an eat what you kill thing. But I think that the reaction to that kind of old school thinking was like, you got to go get it if you want it. If it's to be, it's up to me. Like that whole thing. Like I think there was a big pushback, which was like, whoa, dude, like that's capitalism at its worst. And like, it's true. That can get ugly. And because it's competitive, it's like whoever works the hardest gets the raise. Whoever puts in more hours tends to get further ahead. Like, and it does feel a little zero sum in and of itself. Right. And then the reaction was like more entitlement. Like I just deserve it because I exist. Right. And then up pops in the last, decade, this kind of grind culture thing. It's like, which has its merit, but it all has to be put into context. Again, it's like, it's not just one or the other. It's not that one's right and one's wrong. It's just like, where are you operating from? But I still do think it boils down to noticing that people are like, hey, I want the big executive title someday. And you're like, okay, but that's not going to happen by just showing up every day and doing your work adequately. Like you've got to go do your own research. You've got to go self-educate. You've got to put in a little bit extra. So it's like, here's 8 hours to do your job. You got to put in an hour or two to like, for the job you want to get next, the raise you want to get, the promotion you want to get. You got to put in that extra time. So I don't think there's a right answer, man. I think it's just being really open to like self-awareness. Where am I what am I operating from right now? Am I operating from fear and lack? Or am I operating from an abundant mindset saying, I know what I want and I want more than what this world will give me if I just show up every day. I got to extra show up to get what I want and be empowered by that and make it a choice. I think that's good, but yeah.
I also think having just patience around the whole process. I don't know. I mean, I get you on the sale to sale thing. I mean, that for the audience, This is the first like real job where I've worked for anybody else but myself.
Hmm.
And I can't tell you how many times the day before rent's due, the account's negative. And you're like, shit, how is this going to work? Okay, how do I stretch $18 to eat the whole week? It's a lot of ramen. Like
In there,
it
dude.
was like,
It's
yeah,
rad.
and it's like and of course you grind through that. You get a lot of stress, you reach a lot of breaking points, you get very familiar with the floor, the bottom of your desk, whatever that panic is. But then you also start to learn how to see it coming. And then you go, how do I get proactive about this? How do I improve at it? And then also, how do I shape my mindset around this rather than, oh shit, this won't happen. Instead, it's like, how can I make this happen in an abundant way where I'm just going to go after this and like, let's do it. And I think like a lot of this conversation, which I've loved, is like, I think it comes down to the balance. Like I've been doing a lot of recovery stuff on the fitness thing right now because it's getting a lot darker in the morning, so it's harder to run in the morning. I've been doing a lot of yoga.
Mm.
Yoga is all about ease and effort. It's the balance between the
Mm-hmm.
two. And I think that the direct parallel to me in life is like you need to have a bit of effort to know to ease. So that idea of the vacation side, but then also to know if you are as a person kind of on the right path. Like I think we need to be uncomfortable sometimes in order to learn what comfortable is. Like if everything's good, you don't know what bad is. And so that contrast I think is just like increasingly important. It could be that's why everybody's started getting into cold plunging and all that kind of stuff. It
Yeah.
was like this, how do I get it in 2 minutes to be really
I
uncomfortable
mean, if you
and then
look at
comfortable again?
if you look at some of the most popular, we'll just throw it out there. Let's just say Joe Rogan is the most
Mm-hmm.
popular podcast in the world. A lot of his content is around MMA, fighting, right? Weightlifting. And again, I know it's like bro culture or whatever, but like it's not. I mean, just like be open-minded to the idea that this is just what is present and popular to people. These are
Mm-hmm.
things that all like cold plunge, sauna, extreme, stuff. Like he talks about going out and hunting elk in the wilderness and being out there for weeks at a time, like sleeping, in the dirt. And like these are all, what do those all represent? Like survival efforts,
Mm-hmm.
like these are things that we had to endure just as part of our survival, go back 500 years, whatever. And yet they're part of the popular, thinking these days. We are as a species looking for, now, not everybody. I mean, some people are literally at the lowest end of the social economic spectrum and they're like, dude, survival is real for me. Like it is
Absolutely
freaking hard. And you just spoke about that. And like, so I'm not saying, but I'm just saying, look what is popular. And it's these things that are pushing ourselves, right? And I think that grind culture is a little bit of that as well. It's like, what's possible? What does the upper limit look like? What does maximum output get you? Like, what are the rewards for that? And yet we can't forget that once you make that kill, if you're out hunting, you would bring that thing back to the freaking, the tribe
carry
and
it.
yeah, but you'd bring that thing back and there's a celebration. We're partying all night. We're eating freaking, meat by the fire and partying because we just got, so that's this relaxing phase, right? So
Mm-hmm.
I do think you're right. Balance is not spoken about enough in general in society. And what does seeking balance look like? And then I also think we got to remember that it's a sprint and cruise kind of, you have to have that. That's always existed. Like, and so, yeah, I mean, I don't really think there's a right answer. I think that it's worth, if you're listening, contemplating what your baseline set point is and how much of the time you're resting in that set point. Some people's set point is like, kind of, nonstop, go, 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 go. They probably need to start looking for balance in the other side of their personality, which is learn how to rest, learn how to relax, learn how to get creative, whatever. Yeah. And then there's others that's not the case. Their natural baseline or set point is to just kind of chill and cruise. And so what does it look like to inspire yourself to sprint?
Yep.
And I think then being able to, and I feel like for me at this point in my life, I finally have a foot on both pedals, the gas and the brake. Like I finally feel like I understand my natural rhythms and how to manage that, and when to inspire more active, production, and when to like sit back and get more reflective and creative. Seek balance, man. I think that's, I mean, there's a lot of wisdom in that being an essential part of anything being successful is balance.
Yeah. I mean, when I was a kid, it was always a joke that like Steve ran around until his head hit the pillow and then he went to sleep. And it was
Yeah.
like literally my mom was like, this kid exhausted me because like from the moment he woke up, he was just
Yeah.
running everywhere.
Yeah.
And I've never learned to relax. Like
Mm.
even relaxing to read a book, I'd be like fidgeting, and it was just this. I expend a lot of energy, so therefore I have to go expend energy in order to ease. But I also have had to learn to relax a little bit, which is quite a new
I think
thing.
we should go do ayahuasca in the rainforest, bro.
Dude, right? Honestly, I find that whole self-actualization, self-realization, figure out what your path is, that whole entire side, I think is not addressed enough. Like if you read a lot of the ancient writings across all different civilizations, and even like if you look at, I mean, astronomy, everybody that looked to the stars and were like, we think this is how the galaxy worked. Well, how do you think they did that? They looked up there for a long time and thought deeply. And
Yep.
then it was like, where's our place in all of this?
Yep.
And they thought very deeply. And I think given this grind culture and the push and the how we make everything work, part of that other side is like, how do we start to figure out what our baseline, what we're meant to do? Totally.
Dude, it's well, here's the thing. I mean, this is, I think, fundamental. I mean, we're gonna go really deep here, but like if you look at grind culture, you got to ask, okay, why are you doing it? Well, because I want my business to be XYZ. Okay, why do you want your business to be XYZ? Well, because then I can, have an impact. The business will have an impact. Okay, why do you need your business to have an impact? And like, I just saw like, I think some kind of YouTube clip or something where it was like, if you can ask 5 whys,
Mm-hmm.
you get closer to the truth of what's really going on. Because really it boils down to most of what we're doing is somehow revolving around our core purpose as a human being, and then therefore not understanding that core purpose as a human being and trying to fill that void with something else, right?
Mm-hmm.
Really it boils down to, if you kept asking those whys of that grind culture guy, he would get to the point, well, because I want to feel important. I want to feel enough. I want to feel, like I matter. I want recognition, whatever, right? A core human need. You could, if you reframed, go back through those whys and get to that and just start with that. I want my life to have meaning. So therefore, I'm going to boom, 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 boom. Now you're being strategic, even within your grind culture, because you're reverse engineering what your life having meaning looks like, and then signing up for whatever it's going to take to get there for you. Because not everybody, we all have different versions of what our life having meaning looks like to us. And it can change and evolve over time. But I think that it was helpful for me to break down what am I doing any of this for, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I took it to not the deepest layer, but I got to a point where I was able to just identify what my core purpose is as a human being, which is to inspire positive change. Now you could ask, why do you want to inspire positive change?
Mm-hmm.
And it would boil down to some version of, because I want to have meaning. I want to be important. I want to have, some real core issue. At the end of the day, all of our psychological issues stem from one thing you can say it a number of different ways. So it's basically not enough. We as human beings are somehow inherently born with this thing where we don't feel enough, and we're seeking our whole lives to feel enough. And so we use business, we use relationship, we use sex, we use whatever it is, like to try to fill that that never ending hole. Or you can just identify what that hole is and turn it into a positive, and reverse engineer that. And then, that means to me that, am I inspiring positive change if I'm taking 2 weeks off just sitting around reading a book? Yeah, because I'm showing that I can get to my goal and still take 2 weeks off and read a book. Like I'm an example. Hopefully that's inspiring somebody to see that. Like there's ways to just reframe the psychology behind all this. But yeah, I think tapping into what matters, what's my why, my core why. Why am I doing any of this? Why does it matter? Now, sometimes it is straight up, I just need to pay the bills so that I'm not destitute, right? And you could probably unpack that a little bit, and go, how did I end up here? Why am I living paycheck to paycheck? Why am I at the end of the month with only $18 for ramen? Why did I end up here? What was I doing? What was my intention? And then contextualizing that a little bit and saying, okay, I got here because I'm trying to do something big. This is just, and then you go, well, instead of this sucks and I got to live on $18 for the next month, you go, dude, this is just part of my journey to getting to where I'm trying to get to. Right. And again, back to that core, real positive why. So I think spending time, to your point, read some books on this stuff, go deep, do some reflection, go, whether it's, taking a psychedelic or just learning how to get into breath work and meditation, because that's equally as powerful, by the way.
Game changer.
I've completely let go of needing any kind of psychedelic external exogenous kind of experience. It's more just like I can cultivate that same kind of experience through real dedicated meditation, breath, prayer, whatever. Sometimes just sitting in silence. Sometimes it's connecting with nature, but you can get there and get the same kind of, results. So I'm not advocating that people need to take drugs and do all that. And I wouldn't even call real organic psychedelics drugs, but you know what I'm saying? Like,
yeah.
Go do that work.
Can be super powerful for that. Like,
absolutely.
If anybody has done breath work at a deep level, deep breath work, you get the same. You're alkalizing the blood in the system, and you're also getting it to basically calm your brain to see the forest through trees.
This is like, well, the day and age we live in now is so awesome because you can take ancient yogic practices. Let's just say holotropic breathing, prana, prana breath work is there's lots of different versions of it. And it was a spiritual practice that created spiritual growth. However, science will now tell you exactly what's going on when you're doing that stuff. We have enough understanding of physiology to go, okay, here's what's actually happening. You're oxygenating the blood, you're increasing circulation. In some cases, it's reducing the amount of CO2 that's in the system. And it has all these physiological effects that can be measured. Yet you can't really measure the experience, the internal experience that's occurring from it. And so I love this metaphysics meets physics kind of, and some of it ends up in the quantum mechanics field and stuff, but it's cool to know that there's you're seeing some scientific verification of these things that have been that we've been doing for thousands of years. It's pretty rad.
Oh, it's so cool.
Yeah.
I also love the why game. Like that's what I get to play with the camera is like, I often just get to keep asking why, and go deeper on a lot of these things. And for a long time, I never really explored that with me. I never did why do you want to do this? What are you actually chasing? And I've always wanted, my why is to tell stories of amazing people and to inspire others through that. I somehow have this ability to connect on an emotional level with other people, whether that be a conversation or a movie. Like, I was that younger guy in a try to be manly kind of way, and we watch a movie and I'm just crying, just losing it. And I was like, why? And it was like, oh, there's some sort of connection there. I have something on the EQ side.
That's high EQ. Yeah. That's empathy. I think that's another thing is we don't spend enough time as a society these days actually understanding what empathy means. It's the ability to put yourself in somebody else's shoes, see things from their perspective, which can lead to sympathy, but it doesn't necessarily need to be sympathy. It's just being able to understand someone else's perspective. And EQ is interesting in comparison to IQ. IQ is not necessarily measured based on knowledge or acquired learning. It is just simply how your brain functions. There's, the argument is that IQ really can't be increased throughout your lifespan. EQ, however, becoming more and more prominent in our filtering for best candidates for hiring and so on. Less about IQ, more about EQ. EQ can be expanded over your lifetime. You can increase it through effort and intention. And I'd say that we need to all spend more time on the EQ side of things, more time. I'll take somebody with an average IQ with super high EQ over somebody with a high IQ and low EQ every day of the week.
All day.
Yeah. And I think that most of us like to surround ourselves with people that have higher EQ, right? And so Uh, where was I going with that? I guess the idea being that cultivating that, like kind of looking at that empathy, that EQ, and understanding how that functions. Where am I growing that? What does that look like? Is pretty powerful. I mean, we can go back to the why and go, okay, there's a lot of people out there that go, I hate my job. I hate work. Why? Ask yourself why.
Mm-hmm.
Why? And if that why is because I'm not getting one of or more of my 6 basic human needs met, then what can I change about this circumstance to try to attach some of that? Sometimes it's just a reframe around, instead of going, I hate my job, my boss sucks, I'm here just serving food to people all day. You can shift to be like, dude, I get to serve people all day. I get to
Serve all
connect
these
people
people. Yeah.
people all day. And like just making a shift in your mind can change your whole experience. I don't know. There's a lot to it, but I definitely think we as humans need to go back internal. The kingdom of heaven is within, is one of the many times in many different ancient wisdoms in scripture, but it is very much your peace, happiness, and joy needs to be sought inward, not externally. And once you can figure that out, your purpose, your what makes you happy, and then align your life in a way, even in the worst of circumstances, you can start to find that. And I think Viktor Frankl's book of his experience in the intern camps in the Second World War, where he found total enlightenment, joy, even in the basically the worst of circumstances, is an example of how that's possible. We are incredibly dynamic machines, creatures, organisms, and we get to choose our own adventure. And sometimes it's not about changing the outside circumstances. It's just changing your perspective.
I love that way of putting it, because
What was his book
I
called? A
don't
Man's Search for Meaning? Is that what it was? Do you
I don't
remember?
know, actually. I haven't read that one.
Oh, dude, gotta read that
No, I
book.
haven't
It's
read that
heavy.
one. Every book you've ever recommended to me is always fantastic.
Oh,
Can I
good.
just say that? I mean, a couple years ago, you were like, "Hey, read Autobiography of a Yogi. Changed my life." And I was like,
Really?
"Done." Oh yeah, and
You know where I got that,
it
right?
is incredible.
You know where I got that? I was reading a bio on Jobs, and
Yeah.
I think there's been a lot of bad press around how Jobs led, but I think he was, if you really look carefully, he was incredible, right? He was an
Hmm.
incredible dude. I think he could be abrasive for sure, but I think again, it depends on who your perspective is seeing what he was committing his life to. But he apparently said that was his number one favorite book and took it with him everywhere he went. When he traveled, that was his book. And I was like, well, if I admire Jobs.
Hmm.
If that book was powerful for him, I better read it. And at the time, I was already in that kind of Eastern philosophy search, and so
Yep.
it landed at the perfect timing. And yeah, it changed my life too. But I'm glad it had that impact for you. I would
Oh, it
look
was
up Viktor
amazing.
Frankl. It's not the only book on this subject at all, but it's a good one, and I think that it does speak to some interesting perspective around the human condition for sure.
Do you think that boils down, I mean, going back to just that concept of balance and taking effort and ease and difficulty and kind of relaxation? Do you think part of this also comes down to life experience? Because in order to up your EQ, right, to understand maybe what somebody else is going through, you kind of have to experience either something similar, meaning if it's a really insurmountable challenge that a person didn't think that they could do, what's the insurmountable challenge that you didn't think you could do? It doesn't have to be apples to apples.
Yep.
Like,
Yep.
it's just,
Well, you know
do you
what?
think that it's about experience?
What just popped in my head, I got to just say it because I don't know how relevant this is going to be, but like if I think of like I think as parents or as a community, as society, we should be teaching empathy early. So,
Mhm.
as an example, let's just say you're upper middle class. How do you get life experience in like the grind and what's difficult? Well, you might have some friends down the road, like I did when I was growing up, that had far less
Mhm.
economic means than we did. And through empathy, I was able to learn and gain experience through just understanding their experience or attempting to
Mhm.
understand their experience. Not to say that I actually understood it, right? I didn't live it like
Mhm.
they did. I lived a version of it, but not their experience. But by having empathy, by actually trying to understand what they were going through, I gained some. I learned from it. Whereas I think there's kids that are just like totally apathetic to what's going on around them. They just don't have, they're not looking at things from that lens. And then they grow up as humans, not necessarily having that broader experience. So you don't, I think, yes, life experience, 100%, go get it, right?
Mm-hmm.
But there's also, you can be gaining life experience by just having the introspect and reflecting that against other people's experience and just picking up cues, right? Like
Mm-hmm.
you can be gaining experience by not actually having to live that experience, right? And just by being present with what's happening around you and having that empathy, I think you can gain more experience than you would imagine, maybe.
Mm-hmm. I think also you have just this, I don't know, if you balance out a lot of what you do and put it in the mindset of like a spectrum of difficulty versus ease, you have a lot of people who experience difficult things that you may understand or may not understand. I found through filming, as an example, like some of my early films I ever worked on, I had zero understanding of the person, what they were going through. I worked a lot with nonprofits when I first started, and you just dive right into the deep end of whatever that nonprofit is chasing, doing, that they commit their lives to. And
Yeah.
then you get to see the impact that it has on the other side and the people that are experiencing it. And when you get deep into that process, one, you realize people are people. But two, those seemingly unknown people literally were my heroes. I was like,
Mm,
wait, you have this and you did this? Like, this is so inspiring. And
yeah.
I think very often we always take the tip top person. We're like, that's
Yeah.
the one.
Yeah.
But like, there are so many people around us every single day that we walk by that you have no idea how incredible and inspiring that their story can be. And I think that's like a huge one.
Bro, that's and that I think is the crux of what makes a good company culture, is that if you start with the idea that everybody has unlimited potential, everybody is a rock star, everybody in their own
Mm-hmm.
way. And everybody has a superpower, whether it's obvious or not, and figuring out what that is and understanding their story. And most of us are limited by our thinking, which is some result of how we came up in the world and our circumstances. And and so I think that if you look at things like that, like where, dude, yes, we have these heroes that we can look to and go, but I think most of us look at the Elon Musks or whatever the super achiever is, and go, well, yeah, but they're just a freak. No, that's just an outlier, right? But if you go look at the single mom working two jobs, crushing it, what she does, and raising kids, like that's freak of nature ability,
Mm-hmm.
And do they get credit? No. Does anybody, are people spending the time to look and go, whoa, what within that can I derive to say, wait, you'd probably be a great project manager? You know what I'm saying? Like you would probably crush project management if given the chance, because you are project managing all day, gal. And so, you know what I
Uh-huh.
mean? Like that's the thinking, I think, that leads to having great people in your organization, bringing it
Mm-hmm.
back to business. And again, back to that core kind of, are you taking a few minutes a day to get into self-reflection? Go, wait,
Mm-hmm.
what is the common thread between all these things that I do that could be leveraged or utilized for even more? And if you have a good company culture, you're actually seeking that in people,
Yeah.
and pulling it out of them and showing them a version of themselves or a future or a vision of what they could be or do or their superpower. And typically that lights people up and they get inspired.
Oh
And
yeah.
that's what makes me tick, is inspiring others to their own greatness. Like that is just like what I live for.
Well, and I live in quite a small town. And I mean, we maybe have
I got to come
1,000,
up there and check it
1,200
out,
people.
dude. I got to see what this is all about.
I don't know if you'll go back to
Yeah.
Santa Cruz. But really, it's like what's so interesting about it is like when you have a smaller environment, you realize who the local legends are. I mean, like there's two older people, they go swimming in no matter the temperature, no wetsuit, they just go. Legends. You
Yeah.
have people who've been showing up to the same shop for 50, 60 years, same
Yeah.
bookshop
Yeah.
every day. Legends. And I think for those that are listening, like I think we find a lot of external validation from whatever that job title is, whatever that job, whatever the money, whatever the thing. A lot of the people that I've met in my town, they have the basic needs met, right? are they, as society would deem it, doing something extraordinary? No. But are they doing something extraordinary? Absolutely. And I
Yeah,
think that's the other reminder is like it's not necessarily big fish, small pond, small fish, big pond. It's more just what impact can you have on the people around you and how do you show up for yourself and knowing that like every single person has that superpower and that ability to do incredible things.
I agree, man. I think that's beautiful. I think it's important to remember that we're all heroes. We're all, I mean, yeah, there's some people that are maybe living in a very myopic, self-centered kind of way that is not really admirable. But I guess at the end of the day, they're doing the best they can. And having that mindset of like, they're doing the best they can. Now, here's the question. I had a kind of a sales mentor back in the day. And when we first met, he's like looking at all my tattoos and he's like, well, and I'm thinking, dude, he's like, this guy's a dirtbag. I'm not going to put any time into helping him get where, and he goes, man, I can tell right off the bat, whatever you do it all the way. And I go, yeah, you're kind of right about that, and it was interesting because he took what could be seen as a negative in business that I had covered myself in tattoos and he made it like, dude, that's an example of the fact that you just go all in, man. Like you just go for it. And I went, oh, and that was a light bulb moment for me. Like, oh, that is one of my attributes that I can kind of exploit or leverage or double down on, which is this, just like I go, whatever I do, I'm just going to do it all the way. And to some extent, we're all doing that. We just need to, like that guy gave me some insight about myself that I wouldn't have gained any other place. And we got to look at that for people. Like whatever you're doing something amazing and great, even if it's not like known at scale or if it's not, necessarily registering for others, but just know that about yourself. Like, dude, I have this thing that I can do, or this part of me that's, I have the fortitude and the dedication to get up and go swim in freezing cold water every day. And, and that's something I'm willing to do, what does that mean to you? Right? Like, what does that, where else does that show up in your life? And look carefully at that. And I think it goes back to being able to tell people that, like, hey, you guys are freaking heroes. You're amazing. I like to swim and I can't do what you're doing. Like, you guys are rock stars. Just tell people that. Like, throw a compliment out once in a while. Yep. I think it goes a long way in changing people's lives. I really do. I think that somebody acknowledging, recognizing, validating whatever you are really can inspire you to the next level, whatever that is for you. And I think we don't do that enough, man. It's like, yeah, we don't toss out that like recognition enough, And I think it can change lives. No, it's not. It's really easy, right?
Yeah, it's really easy, and I don't know. I think, I mean, like when I was a kid, my mom, her goal, and still is, but it was ever since I was a kid, her goal was to make 3 to 5 people a day smile.
Yeah,
that's it.
Totally, dude.
And it was like, what can happen when you do that enough days, on and on?
That's right.
And it's...
And what does it look like to show up where you're in the coffee shop and you walk over to somebody and go, hey, I just want you to know your smile just like brightened my day. Like just changed my day. Thank you. Like it goes both ways, right? It's powerful, man. It's straight up, dude. It's like getting back to like humanness.
Yeah. Well, and even like some of the, I think the knee-jerk reaction of society sometimes when something that, I think most people would agree is not a very good decision to do. Nobody, I immediately asked the question, why would they have done that? Why would the person have done that?
Yeah.
Was it because they were under pressure? They, Maslow's hierarchy, like what do people do for survival?
Yeah.
That it doesn't make it right or wrong, because it's more, it puts into perspective before putting it into the wrong category immediately, think about why it's happening first.
Less judgment.
We're all humans.
Yes, totally. Less opinions, less judgment. Just being in like, what if you started with everybody's just doing the best they can, right? Yep. And given their circumstances, given the patterns of thinking that have developed over time, they're just doing the best they can and having some grace, yep. To where you don't start with judgment, you start with openness. And to your point, going, okay, I want, why or how or whatever, as opposed to just judgment. It really limits things to be in constant opinion and judgment. I'm really working on that myself, to be like, do I really need to have an opinion on so many things? What if I just didn't have an opinion as often as I do? Like, what would happen? Nothing but more freedom and peace happens from that. Like,
Mm-hmm. Yeah. It's so funny. Like, before we wrap this up, I had one, we have a local ranch that we get a lot of our beef from. And even this weekend we went, it's like, oh, let's go with the, 70-30 mix. Really massaged beef, all that kind of fun stuff. And they're like, well, we don't have any of that. We only got 80-20. I was like, perfect. Let's do it.
Yeah.
And they're literally like, every time we don't have what you're asking for, you're like, that's great. And it's like, well, yeah, because I'm just grateful that this even is available.
That everything is
like,
perfect mindset is like, I think a pathway to some version of like, real joy and bliss and peace and illumination, enlightenment, is like just being in acceptance, just being in peace, just being like, oh, that's what the universe has for me today. Must be perfect. It's exactly what I need.
Yep.
It's great. I love that.
Yep.
How's the high protein going?
It's getting there. It's honestly, I've gotten there.
Are you up to about a gram per pound?
Almost.
Yeah.
That's a hard one. And right now it's just it's being able, I've always had, I don't have the running problem or the swimming problem. I have the eating problem.
Yeah.
Getting myself to eat enough is like the biggest challenge. And I didn't learn that until really talking to a lot of people who have either done bodybuilding or type of build for any type of exercise. They were like, dude, the hardest challenge is eating. And I was like, all right, challenge accepted.
Not for this fat kid, man. It's actually, I've gotten better at it. I think the more whole foods you eat, the harder it is to get all of it in, because it's way easy to get the calories if you're eating crap, Yeah, and maybe it's not, the real recommendation, I think, is 0.75, 0.8 grams per pound of lean body mass, which might be like more like 100 grams for you, 120 grams for you, or whatever, something like that, as opposed to trying to get that 150 and above or whatever. So yeah, you got to just find your own balance. But yeah, that I've gotten a lot out of just focusing on protein. And apparently, I just heard too that like part of our hunger signaling comes from our body's need to meet the protein requirements first and foremost. So when we keep snacking and eating, it's really our body just saying we haven't met our protein requirements. And that if you prioritize protein, you won't have that food chatter. And it's probably not a problem for you, but for a lot of us it is. And so by targeting adequate protein intake, you can eliminate a lot of that food chatter, kind of in your head. So
we may have to go into that in the next episode of
nutrition.
Like fueling the body.
Yeah,
I think it's huge in performance, both a business and just outside of it.
For sure, man.
Sweet. All right, Steve. This episode, Derek, thank you. It's Power to the People.
Thank you.
We'll see you next time.
Energy is inherently a part of everything we do in our lives, but one of the least understood things.
I can see a future where there is limitless and free energy. And that's a pretty beautiful world to live in.